Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. We are starting our descent into the Nine Hells, and we're going to start with one of my personal favorites, the Lord of the Flies, Baalzebul. Now, before we get started, I want to send a big shout out to our good friends over at Critical Failures. We're part of a live stream game every Wednesday nights. We're doing Descent into Avernus, so that'll be exciting and kind of on point with the next couple of topics we will do. I also want to say a big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. And I do want to apologize if my voice sounds off. I just had a procedure where I got my sinuses expanded so I can fix a problem I had. So I will be kind of congested for the next week or two. So hopefully this will get over quick. But with that out of the way, let's get back to the video. Now, before Baalzebub's fall, he was an archon from Mount Celestia. That's the lawful plane of good in the outer planes. You have to be lawful good to be there. That's where all the lawful good deities stay. It is the plane of Celestia. Angels and entities like that would come from here. Aasimar, a lot of their lineage comes from the upper planes, which would be considered Lord Celestia would fall into that. Now, being an archon named Trial, Triel. There is a city named after it somewhere in Dungeons and Dragons. But this archon had one fatal flaw, and that was their love of themselves, their vanity, and their pursuit of perfection. Because of this, Trial would end up becoming volatile, scheming, and problematic, cause violence when things wouldn't match his perfection or his ideal of perfection. This problem ended up becoming so prolific that he ends up getting banished from Mount Celestia, which is a very rare thing because you have to be lawful good to be kind of like absorb that kind of like world and grow in power there. But he was banished by other Celestials, by other Archons, for how he acted. And he was sent down to the land of Baator, which is where the Nine Hells are, in the lower planes. Now, Asmodeus took favoritism upon Trial for some reason. His ambition, maybe his unrelenting pursuit of perfection, and his cunning must have inspired Asmodeus. So when Trial ended up coming down to Baator and succumbing to the corruption, he had a new form, where his previous form was that of a beautiful archon, like a giant human that was just stunning to see. When he landed in Baator, the corruption of who he was that got him kicked out of Celestia started to take shape in his appearance. His new form, when he lands, was still of a tall humanoid. He was shimmering with sable skin and the jittering compound eyes of a fly. Still, he was angelically stunning, even after his fall from grace. But that's not the Baalzebub we know now. The Baalzebub we know now is a lord of he's the Lord of the Flies, but he's also the Slug Lord, the Slug Archduke, Lord of the Seventh. We're going to get into why Asmodeus curses him and puts this crime onto him, his punishment for the crimes onto him. But his new form is a mutated form that's about 25 feet tall and a slug. A grotesque abomination, infamously unpleasant even to other devils. The Lord of Flies was constantly surrounded by the swarms of buzzing, scuttling creatures that earned him this title. His body glistened with mucus thanks to this curse. Fecal matter and other rancid filth manifestation piles whenever he went, resulting in his notoriously noxious stench. His deformed arms rested at his front. They were more comparable to prehensile tails in functionality. replacing his handsome visage with a gross human-like face with torpid lips, incapable of properly pronouncing words without a slimy, wet lisp. However, even when reduced to such an unsightful state, faint glimpses of the slug archduke's previous glorious appearance could still be made out. He had recently managed to work off his punishment, partially freeing him from Asmodeus' curse, allowing him to return to his humanoid form. This, though, he keeps secret. Whenever he appears to other devils or other people that aren't necessarily important to him, he appears as the Lord of Flies, as the Slug Archduke, in this slug-like form. He reverts when he's in his own personal silence, or when he doesn't need to kind of perform, which is something I really, really personally enjoy, because it does show this great deception that he is still willing to do. He still plays that he's being punished, and that he's still suffering, even though he's not. He wants to seem like he's still weak, but he's hiding something, and he's been hiding something for quite some time. Of Beelzebub's many flaws, his most crippling was his perfectionist extremism. His unfiltered dedication to achieving physical flawlessness and greater dominion is what caused his initial fall from the seven heavens. As such callous ambition was more befitting of a devil, seemingly incapable of realizing when he had gone too far. His utter arrogance led him to undermine his own plans by overreaching. He might have even been able to defeat his rival, Mephistopheles, if in his overconfident scheming he didn't also aim to defeat Asmodeus, causing him to fall even further than before. This occurred all during the Reckoning of Hell, and that's something we're going to cover once we get into a little bit of an understanding of all the other entities, because this displaced a few rulers of various levels and involves some previous rulers that are no longer viable as rulers, who still won and may claim their places back, but it's probably unlikely. But the Reckoning of Hell is what causes Asmodeus to curse Beelzebub and turn him into the Lord Slug Archduke. That curse is what causes his personality to shift a little, as we'll see. Beelzebub made an effort to stay calm on the surface, often withholding his true feelings from others. In truth, the Lord of Lies had viewed his transformation into a slug not simply as an obstacle to be overcome, but as a humiliating experience. He had become an abusive taskmaster during his time in hell, a sadistic torturer that displaced his anger on his subject and loved disheartening them. But after being cursed, he became neglectful and miserable himself. Oftentimes, he ignored his depressing duties in favor of plotting revenge and fantasizing about regaining his original form of Troil. Despite his flaws, Beelzebub was still dangerously cunning and charismatic. If not for the interference of Grayon, who was the previous lord of Stygia, but he ended up getting displaced by currently Levistus. He might have not only been able to best Mephistopheles, but even oust Asmodeus himself. Even when trapped in his inarticulate slug-like form, he was still the Lord of Lies, whose every deception and false statement was made with ease. He was not to be mistaken as a pathological liar, as he told each untruth with a purpose in his mind. He indeed managed to keep a hold on his layers for several millennia without lying, at least to other devils. Part of the curse that Asmodeus placed on the slug archduke Beelzebub is that he couldn't lie to other devils, and that for every lie Beelzebub had told, he would spend a year as the slug archduke. So millennia has gone on. So you can understand how long he has to go for every lie and every cunning trick that he's ever tried to pull on devils. But also in that time, you understand that he's cunning enough that he at this point has paid for that punishment and will often retreat back into his normal form outside of the view of other devils, keeping that forced truth because he accomplished that task. He suffered that punishment. That punishment is over. Though he'll never turn back into Trail, at least he looks like his still beautiful self when he landed in Baator originally. But that works in his favor. Others see him as a slug and detest being in his presence, but know that he has to be truthful to them, making his words more impactful, which is rather cunning and smart on his side. Now, Beelzebub's seventh layer of hell is called Maladomini, which is a lot of fun. It's actually my favorite name for all the Nine Hells layers. And Maladomini has the unfortunate circumstance to be very reflective of Beelzebub. And we're going to go into a little bit of detail. Now, the flavor text reads as follows. If anything exemplifies Beelzebub's legacy of failure and degeneration in pursuit of perfection, it was his lair, Maladomini. Once, perhaps, Maladomini was a beautiful landscape filled with grandiose cities, roads, bridges, and other symbols of splendor and triumph. No matter their excellence, however, Beelzebub was never content with the cities he was presented with, striving to complete a configuration of form and function worthy of his greatness. Upon completion, new cities were inevitably deemed unsuitable. He demanded the construction begin anew. As in most of his endeavors, Beelzebub was able to envision his idealized result, but unable to bring it into reality. This was partially a result of his endless toiling, practitioners having to had the ability to create such things beaten out of them. The results of Beelzebub's folly was a druid's worst nightmare, a defiled, suffering world robbed of nature, the only persistent life being the fly swarms said to be Beelzebub's eyes and ears. Below the black blood sky was the surface spotted with strip mines that scarred the land like gaping wounds, and leaked polluted gas into the air. Petitioners and lesser devils alike lacked the tools, but were nonetheless forced to dig deeper underground for stone and minerals to carve and cut, further contributing to the destruction. Malagard was the personal residence of Beelzebub. Malagard was so vast that not even its lord knew all of its many miles of passages and rooms. Even as it was being constructed, however, Beelzebub's servants knew that while it was without doubt his greatest city, he would end up declaring it unsatisfactory and force them to start again, with some even sabotaging their work to delay the inevitable. Sure enough, Malagard became a symbol of sloth and nihilistic ruin, as it slowly crumbled and fell into surrounding dirt while the poorly kept roads became rivers of trash. Even the occasional repairing spree quickly ended. Every day the crushing defeatism weighed more upon the devil denizens, with even the insistent Beelzebub eventually giving up, preventing its demise. In the center of Malagard was the Palace of Filth, Beelzebub's castle that turned into a building-shaped pile of amorphous dung at the same time that Beelzebub was cursed and ordered by Asmodeus to be filled with even more filth. Beelzebub had to hollow the interior himself to create corridors and rooms that periodically reinforce slumping ones with the ooze from his bloating body, lest they collapse on his servants. This palace was practically indistinguishable from the surrounding city and inhabited by Utos and Gargantulas, the former of which were ignored as they disposed of the feces, and latter which were Beelzebub's personal guards. This is a perfect reflection of how Beelzebub also sees himself, which is what caused this great depression in his actions and abilities. It really affected him and changed the way his world was. And now everyone is kind of stuck in this perpetual nihilistic approach to everything, because everything they know is never going to meet the standard and will be destroyed or forced to be taken down. And nothing's worse than forcibly watching your hard work be deemed unworthy and poor and then forced to start again. It's a punishment not only to Beelzebub to suffer his own failures at every waking turn, but also for the people that are bound to him, which I think is a great testament to the intelligent mind of Asmodeus. What a way to punish someone. What a way to ruin their entire force and life and being, to perpetuate this. Now, after his mortifying experience as a slug, Beelzebub limited his open plotting to the lords of the Eighth and focused his energies on sneaking more spies into Asmodeus' court. The Lord of the Eighth is Mephistopheles, while also appealing to him primarily by making his rivals look incompetent by comparison. The curses inflicted upon his master effectively neutralizing his ability to properly forge alliance with his peers. So much of this time was spent completing his actual duties as Archduke and overseeing the soul-driven bureaucracy of his layers, edicts, policies, treaties, and other documents that were kept in underground archival labyrinth that Melodamini had made after his defeat, protected by traps, devils, and confounding classification systems. His jealousy guarded all the power and secrets he could from other archdevils, particularly Asmodeus and Mephistopheles, in order to eventually enact his takeover of hell, and at one point hoarded souls intent to perform a ritual to escape his sluggish form. Again, that ritual is a red herring. It is designed to make people believe that he still is forced into the sluggish form. He won't ever stop trying to take over the Nine Hells. But part of that punishment that effectively prevents him from forging allies, again, because of the reckoning of hell. Also, that curse also affected the deals he makes with others. All the deals devils make to bring souls into the Nine Hells are made to these archdukes. Maybe some of their lieutenants underneath them, someone in their policies, but ultimately those contracts are held by the archdukes of each layer. Beelzebub's deals are always forced to be like a monkey's paw with whoever he ends up making a deals with. The monkey's paw is an ancient cursed item in legend that, like, you can make a few wishes, and if you did, you would get the wish, but it would end up bad for you. Like, oh, I wish for, it's one of those things where, like, if you ever played Twisted Metal, it was kind of like winning Twisted Metal and getting the wish there. I know I'm going back a little bit, but like, I wish for my love to return to life, and it's a zombie, and it's brainless, and it only tries to eat you. Like, those kinds of things are what deals with Beelzebub ended up being, which is why deals with the devil kind of have that connotation. It's because they're kind of based on deals with Beelzebub, where they're bound to fall apart for whoever agreed to do the deal with them, which also affects devils, keeping Beelzebub incapable of making alliances, or so it seems. With all that said and done, we're going to bring this video to a close. We will talk about Baalzebul again when we get into the Reckoning of Hell, but you should at least know some of the players involved and why they have these alliances and theories. But understand the Reckoning of Hell is a very cool moment, and we will definitely cover it. But if you made it this far into the video, definitely hit like and subscribe. Please, I'd love to hear your comments on what your favorite Devil of the Nine Hells is, or how you feel personally about Baalzebul, if you like him as much as I do. Let me know. Big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. A big thank you to our good friends at Critical Failures, where we're part of a live stream game Wednesday nights. Check us out there. The links to everything is in the description, as well as the link to our World of Warcraft gaming channel, Feldcrest. And thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.